Imagine building something so powerful that 2,000 years after it collapsed, its laws still govern you. Its language still lives in yours. Its roads still tell you where to drive. Its political system still shapes the country you live in right now. That's Rome, not ancient history. Rome is the operating system the modern world is still running on. And today, we're going to tell the whole story, from a wolf nursing 2 abandoned babies in a forest, to the greatest military machine the world had ever seen, to one of the most spectacular collapses in human history. This is the entire story of the Roman Empire. Every great civilization tells a story about where it came from. Rome's founding story is one of the most dramatic ever told. Twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, born as the illegitimate sons of Mars, the god of war. As infants, they were abandoned and thrown into the Tiber River to die. Instead, a wolf found them, raised them, protected them like her own pups. When the brothers grew up, they founded a city on the banks of the Tiber. But brothers don't share power easily. The 2 fought, Remus died, and Romulus named the city after himself, Rome. Population: 1 man with a lot of ambition and apparently no guilt. Now, did any of that actually happen? Roman historians invented those legends to give their city a divine, dramatic origin story. The real story, backed by archaeology, is that Rome started around 625 BC as a modest trading post on the Tiber River. Villages in the regions called Etruria and Latium banded together, probably for protection, and slowly a city was born. Less cinematic, but the story gets much wilder from here to Rome's first era was the kingdom, and right away, Rome did something surprising. The king wasn't chosen by bloodline. A governing body called the Senate picked the ruler. 7 kings ruled Rome across this period, but the 7th king, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, Tarquin the Proud, was a tyrant who pushed Rome too far. His son assaulted a noblewoman named Lucretia. The news tore through Rome like wildfire. The people rose up. The nobility rose up. Together, they dragged Tarquin out of power in 509 BC. Just like that, the kingdom was over. Something entirely new was about to take its place, and it would last nearly 500 years. Rome invented the Republic. Think about that. The word you use to describe your own country's system of government, that word comes directly from Rome. 2 elected leaders called consuls ran the empire. A senate divided between the wealthy patricians and the working-class plebeians held the real power. In theory, it was balanced. In practice, the rich almost always won. The tension between the haves and everyone else never fully went away, and it would eventually tear the whole system apart. But before that implosion, Rome was on an extraordinary RUNWY 338 BC. It had absorbed the entire Italian peninsula. In 390 BC, the neighboring Gauls stormed Rome and burned half of it down. Rome rebuilt. Under the general Camillus, Rome came back stronger, pushed the Gauls out, and never stopped expanding. The machine was just getting started. For the next century, Rome was locked in the most brutal conflict it had ever faced. The Punic Wars, 3 wars against Carthage, a massively powerful city-state in what is now Tunisia on the North African coast. Carthage controlled the Western Mediterranean. Rome wanted it, and Rome was willing to fight for a century to get it. The Second War gave the world one of the greatest military minds in history, Hannibal, a Carthaginian general so brilliant, so feared, that Roman parents used his name to scare their children into behaving. Hannibal is at the gates. Hannibal's story is so extraordinary, it deserves its own documentary. But by the Third Punic War, from 149 to 146 BC, Rome had finally had enough. They didn't just beat Carthage, they erased it. Roman soldiers looted the city, then burned every last building to ash. Greek historian Appian wrote that 200,000 people died. The 50,000 survivors were sold into slavery. Carthage ceased to exist. Rome now controlled the Western Mediterranean, so it turned east and kept going. Rome meets Greece and changes forever. As Rome conquered east, it encountered the legacy of Alexander the Great. the Kingdom of Macedonia. Rome defeated it, but something fascinating happened in the aftermath. The conquered culture began conquering the conquerors. Greek philosophy reshaped how Romans thought. Greek architecture transformed how Romans built. Greek art changed what Romans found beautiful. Walk through Rome today, and you're looking at that fusion. Two civilizations merged into something greater than either one alone. By 100 BC, Rome was the unquestioned superpower of the known world. But power always has a cost. Political instability crept in. Civil wars broke out. Leaders who fought for the poor were assassinated. Others who tried to force reform were killed. And when a republic grows weak and unstable, one type of man always finds a way to step into the vacuum. History calls him a strongman. Rome called him Julius Caesar. Rome sends Caesar north with one job: bring Gaul under Roman control. Gaul covered what is now France, Belgium, Switzerland, and parts of Germany. The Gauls were fierce, independent, and had absolutely no intention of surrendering to anyone. They chose their greatest warrior leader and prepared for war. What followed was 6 years of the most brutal military campaigning Rome had ever seen. The decisive moment came at Alesia in 52 BC. Caesar laid siege to the city for months. He surrounded it so completely that no food, no water, no reinforcements could get through. The people of Alesia starved. When they finally broke, Caesar had won the war. The biographer Plutarch records that Caesar's army fought 3 million Gauls. 1 million were killed, millions more enslaved. Caesar came home to Rome the most famous man alive. And that fame made the Senate extremely nervous. They ordered Caesar to disband his army and return to Rome alone. Caesar's response? He marched his army straight toward the city and crossed the Rubicon River, an act of open defiance that triggered civil war. He then formed an alliance with 2 other generals, Pompey and Crassus, known as the First Triumvirate. For a while, 3 men controlled all of Rome. But ambition doesn't share well. Crassus launched his own military campaign to match Caesar's fame. He died for it. Some accounts say his enemies poured molten gold down his throat. With Crassus gone, Caesar and Pompey turned on each other. Pompey sided with the Senate. At the Battle of Pharsalus in 48 BC, Caesar crushed him. Pompey fled to Egypt, where King Ptolemy had him murdered to win Caesar's favor. Caesar now stood alone. He declared himself dictator for life. 5 years. That's how long Caesar's dictatorship lasted. And in that time, Rome genuinely improved. Roads built, laws reformed, the poor got real relief. People worshipped Caesar like a god walking among them. But a small group of senators watched all of this and saw not a savior, but a tyrant destroying the republic they had sworn to protect. Their leaders were Cassius and Brutus. Brutus, a man Caesar loved like a son. On March 15, 44 BC, the Ides of March, Caesar walked into a Senate meeting. A group of senators surrounded him under the pretense of presenting a petition. Then the knives came out. 23 stab wounds. In the chaos, Caesar caught a glimpse of Brutus among the attackers. His final words, as history records them, "Et tu, Brute? You too, Brutus?" The senators thought assassinating Caesar would save the republic. Instead, it destroyed it. The Roman people were enraged. And from the ashes of Caesar's death stepped the man who would end the republic forever, Caesar's grandnephew and adopted son, Octavian. The empire was about to be born. Octavian formed the Second Triumvirate with Caesar's general Mark Antony and an ally named Lepidus. In 42 BC, they crushed the Senate's forces at the Battle of Philippi. Rome was divided. Octavian took the west, Antony the east, Lepidus got North Africa. Then Octavian forced Lepidus out. 2 men left. While ruling the east, Mark Antony fell in love with Cleopatra, who had previously been involved with Julius Caesar himself. Octavian weaponized this. He launched a propaganda campaign claiming Antony had abandoned Roman values, was controlled by a foreign queen, and wanted to make Cleopatra ruler of Rome. He declared Antony a traitor. Were followed. At the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, Octavian's fleet destroyed Antony and Cleopatra's navy. They fled to Egypt. Octavian surrounded them. By 30 BC, both Antony and Cleopatra had taken their own lives. Octavian stood alone. He took the name Augustus, and the Roman Empire officially began. Augustus ruled for 41 years, and he was exceptional. He ended the civil wars that had torn Rome apart for generations. He reformed the laws, invested in architecture, and gave the empire the one thing it had been starving for: stability. This era is called the Pax Romana, Roman peace. The people loved him so deeply that when Augustus died in 14 AD at age 75, Rome declared him a god. The month of August still carries his name. After Augustus, his adopted son Tiberius ruled for 22 years, a period that overlapped with the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Then came Caligula. 3 years of paranoid sadistic rule. He had innocent people executed on invented charges. He insulted the Senate publicly and repeatedly. His own guards finally ambushed him in a corridor and killed him. Nobody ever found out who gave the order. Claudius followed, more interested in banquets than governing. His wife Agrippina eventually poisoned him and installed her teenage son on the throne. That son was Nero, emperor at 16 and one of the most catastrophic rulers in the history of civilization. He had his own mother killed because she had too much influence over him. He bankrupted the treasury. He executed critics without trial. The biographer Suetonius documented acts of incest, animal cruelty, and random murder. Then Rome caught fire. Nero blamed the Christians. This gave rise to one of history's most enduring phrases about corrupt, detached leaders: Nero fiddled while Rome burned. Historians believe it was almost certainly propaganda invented by his enemies. The fiddle didn't even exist yet. But the fire was real, and Rome's patience with Nero was completely gone. The governor of Spain, Galba, challenged Nero for power. Support collapsed overnight. Nero fled the city, was declared an enemy of the state, and at age 30, took his own life. The Julio-Claudian dynasty, the line stretching all the way back to Augustus, died with him. What happened next sounds like a political thriller because it essentially was one. In the year 69 AD, 4 different men claimed the throne of the most powerful empire on earth in a single year. The Senate backed Galba, but Galba immediately cut the military's pay. The legions revolted. The German armies declared their own general, Vitellius, emperor. Before civil war could erupt, Galba's own bodyguards, the Praetorian Guard, the men sworn to protect him with their lives, turned on him and killed him in the street. The second emperor murdered by his own protectors. The Senate crowned Otho next, a man historians describe as genuinely decent and capable. But Vitellius refused to yield. Their armies clashed. Otho's forces were crushed at the Battle of Bedriacum. Cassius Dio recorded that 40,000 Roman soldiers died in a single day. When Otho learned the result, he refused to send more men to die. He ended his own life after just 3 months on the throne. Historians believe had he been given the chance, he might have been one of Rome's finest emperors. He never got that chance. Vitellius marched into Rome. His soldiers immediately turned on the city's own citizens, looting homes, killing people in the streets, attacking women. The Senate surrendered. Rome had hit rock bottom. It needed a savior, and one was on his way. A portion of the Roman army revolted and declared their commander, Vespasian, emperor. His forces marched on Rome. When Vitellius realized he was losing, he tried to hide in the city. The people of Rome found him, dragged him out, spat on him, tortured him publicly, threw his body in the river. On December 22, 69 AD, the Senate declared Vespasian emperor. The chaos was over. Vespasian was everything Rome had been missing: disciplined, intelligent, fair. He gave the Senate back its power, reformed the laws, and balanced the interests of the wealthy and working classes. He began construction on the Colosseum, still standing today, still one of the most visited sites on the planet. When he died, his son, Titus, succeeded him, the first time in Roman history that a biological son directly inherited the throne. Then came the era of the 5 good emperors, 96 AD to 192 AD, Rome at its absolute peak. Under Emperor Trajan, the empire reached its largest size in history. Rome's population hit 1 million people. A road network connected every corner of the empire, a transportation system that still shapes the map of Europe today. Emperor Hadrian built massive fortifications in Britain. He rebuilt the Pantheon. The last of the great emperors, Marcus Aurelius, spent most of his reign on the battlefield. But in the gaps between campaigns, he wrote one of the most influential philosophy books ever written, Meditations, still read, still studied around the world every single day. After Marcus Aurelius, his son Commodus took over and everything changed. Commodus cared more about gladiator fights than governance. He declared himself a living god. His own inner circle eventually had him strangled in his bath by a fighter named Narcissus. Rome collapsed back into chaos. Over the next 100 years, more than 25 emperors came and went. Almost every single one of them assassinated. At one point, the Praetorian Guard killed the sitting emperor and literally auctioned off the throne to whoever could pay the most. One emperor's reign lasted 22 days. Rome, the civilization that had dominated the world for centuries, was now eating itself alive. In 285 AD, Emperor Diocletian made a bold structural decision. He split the empire in two, a western half and an eastern half, each with its own emperor and deputy. He called it the Tetrarchy. And in 305 AD, Diocletian did something almost no Roman emperor had ever done voluntarily. He retired, stepped down from the most powerful throne in the world, and walked away. What followed was another brutal power struggle. Constantine, son of the Western Empire's deputy, went to war against a rival claimant named Maxentius. Before the decisive battle, Constantine reportedly saw a cross blazing in the sky. He interpreted it as a sign from God. He had crosses painted on every flag, every shield, every banner his army carried. He won the battle. Maxentius was killed. In the aftermath, Constantine embraced Christianity and made it the official religion of the Roman Empire. One vision, one battle, 2,000 years of consequences. Constantine ruled until 337 AD. After Constantine died, his sons tore the empire apart fighting over it. By 392 AD, Emperor Theodosius I had briefly reunited both halves. But after his death, his sons divided it again. Arcadius took the east, which would survive and thrive as the Byzantine Empire for another 1,000 years. Honorius took the west, and the west was dying. The contrast became brutal. The Byzantine East grew wealthy, strengthened its walls, and expanded its trade. The Western Empire spiraled into economic crisis. Its defenses weakened, its treasury went dry, and the barbarians at the border noticed. The Goths attacked repeatedly. In 455 AD, the Vandals swept in and burned everything they could reach. By 476 AD, it was finished. The Western Roman Empire no longer existed. Here's the detail that history almost seems to have arranged on purpose. The last emperor of Rome shared his name with the very first king, Romulus. After losing to a Germanic general named Odoacer, Emperor Romulus Augustus was sent into exile. He lived out the rest of his days in a crumbling fortress, the last ruler of a civilization that had once held the entire world in its hand. 2,000 years later, Rome is still everywhere. Your government is built on Roman ideas. The English language carries Latin in its bones. The calendar you use every single day, Roman. The roads that connect your cities trace routes that Roman engineers first mapped. The Catholic Church is headquartered in Rome for a reason. Western civilization is, in a very real sense, Rome's longest-running sequel. Rome didn't just conquer land, it conquered time. And understanding how it rose and why it fell might be the most important history lesson any of us can learn. Because every warning sign that brought Rome down, we've seen them before, and we're seeing them again. If this documentary hit differently than what you usually watch, like it, share it, and subscribe. These videos take serious time and research to produce, and your support is what makes them possible. Drop a comment below and tell us which civilization you want us to cover next. We'll see you in the next one.